The other
Yeah.
warning sign, the sort of the child of that warning sign. I don't know if you can have a child of a warning sign, but the child of that warning sign is that,
The
like,
spawn.
they want you to discount the service by so much because they're going to bring you so much business,
So much for business. I've
so
heard
much
that as well.
business.
I've heard that as well.
That cool. Hey, business. Tell you, Jermaine, business is not easy. See, there's always gonna be stuff that you're gonna encounter, especially when you got a business partner, or even if you're not, you're just on your own with clients, with your if you've got a life partner, if you're married or in a relationship, like there's always like all of these things. Interactions with other humans is always gonna pull you in 1,000 different directions.
Yeah, of
My
course.
wife asked me the other day. She asked me a great question. I'm having a bit of a challenge with a client, and it's the usual client stories. It's a haggle over price. It's a haggle over service. It service, and the price balance, and they want more for less. I want to do less, but I want to charge more. So all these things, and and it also just dealing with like the way that they do business. Like as soon as I started doing some work with them, I got invited to what felt like 1,000 meetings, and it was added to WhatsApp groups and Teams and chat bots and Trello boards and like a whole bunch of stuff. Like it just like I was just like, oh my, what is going on here? Like it was ridiculous. My phone was buzzing like constantly as people were having conversations over WhatsApp. And like, how do you get anything done? I was wondering like, what the hell? How do you get things done? And it reminded me of when I worked in corporate, and I was like, oh yes, oh yeah, that's why I never liked corporate, because it was meeting after meeting like that. It was a stand-up meeting in the morning, like a half an hour stand-up meeting. They probably had like 30 people invited to it. I was like, what's the point of this? Like, why do 30 people need to know what's happening in this half an hour meeting? And the meeting was never half an hour. I mean, I only attended once. That's to be honest, but it was just like I
Yeah.
was in a meeting for half an hour. I contributed nothing. I didn't even unmute my mic once.
Mm.
And I was like, I just had no idea what they were talking about. And this is what corporate life felt like for me. There's endless meetings that just amounted to nothing. And
Mm.
or at least in your mind, nothing, because you shouldn't have to
Mm.
be there to start with.
Mm.
And so, you know, a lot of the stuff can get you kind of demotivated and depressed. And I was trying to think about, talking to my wife about the issue, saying like, it's driving me nuts because this isn't the kind of client I want to work with. And she hit me back
Yeah.
with something that really, like, it took it, like, I still don't actually have the answer. I'm trying to think about the answer.
Okay.
She she said to me, so what is your perfect client?
Ooh.
Oh
I want to
goodness.
take a stab at that though, if I may.
Okay.
Who is the perfect client?
Who is someone
So,
that
so I'm gonna take a stab, and
okay.
maybe you can sleep on it while you uh, go back to Sharon and give your answer. But if I have to answer it, I would say the perfect client would be the client that initial meeting that you had, right? You scoped out the work, you've put that fee proposal out to him, that for all the reasons that we mentioned earlier about your worth, what you honestly think it's going to cost, and you go with it, right? And then that client um, will mull over it. He will say, okay, cool. He will ask you, is this the best price? You're going to go back and you're going to say yes, and he's going to go with it. And that relationship is just a mutually beneficial relationship going forward. If there's increases, annual escalations to be had, you know, he can now see the value that you've added to his business, and he does not complain, right? It's that same client, Richard. If I'm gonna go and I pick up the phone during a COVID pandemic, that I'm gonna tell him, listen here, if you do have any issues, right, regarding cash flows, let's have a chat, right? Let's have a compromise, and that's the type of client for me. that is the perfect client, because I won't hesitate to actually do some work, put it on account, knowing that the client will honor the bill. Um, and I've actually put it out to a couple of clients during the initial lockdown period, and none of them came back to me saying, Nana, can we have that discussion? So that for me is the perfect line. That you, as a service provider, you kind of prepared to sacrifice a bit to make sure you know you can maintain the relationship to no one's detriment, really. I don't know. That's me. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, it does. It does make sense. I mean, for me, I actually like it's still something that I'm trying to think through is what is the perfect client because I got a lot of great clients to be honest,
Mm,
and
mm,
you know, there's there are times where I think a certain client is like being an ass, but I also try to sort of look at things from their perspective. Say like, okay, cool, what's going on here? Like,
yeah.
am I
Mm,
being unreasonable in this? Is there something that I'm
mm,
caught up with emotionally that maybe is
mm,
affecting my judgment?
yeah.
Or practically on paper, when I put all the stuff down, I put the numbers down, whatever. Is this request from the client unreasonable? Now,
Good point.
when you
Mm,
when you take that back to like a life situation, you know,
mm,
just normal life, you take the
mm,
client like relationship out of it, just like as a human to human relationship. At any point, another human is gonna ask something of you that's just gonna make you uncomfortable, and so though
mm,
that like discomfort is something that pulls us, you know,
mm,
and I've learned over my experience is that just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's bad. Is this good uncomfortable or bad uncomfortable? And that's really what
correct.
I try
Mm,
to get out of it.
mm,
And good uncomfortable is I'm gonna learn something here. I'm gonna have to do something, and I'm gonna learn something either whether it be like a business learning, a industry learning, or technical learning of how to do a thing. Like I'm gonna learn something here, and once I learn that, I'm never gonna unlearn it. I'm gonna know it forever, you know. And I'm gonna be able to apply that to other things. And so I try to think of that stuff. So even if the price may not be um, at what I feel should be the right billable amount, you know. So for in a service industry, maybe it's not at my standard hourly rate. So I might feel like it's a bit of an undercharge, but I look at the sort of over indexing longer return on me doing that thing. I go, someone's paying me to do some R&D that,
mm,
that I probably do need to do, but now someone's
mm,
gonna pay me, and so I look at that and I go, cool, that's worth it.
mm,
Bad uncomfortable is I've been doing this for 10 years. I know exactly what needs to be done. Like it's a walk in the park. There's nothing new for me to learn here. It's the first time this client is doing it and they haggle over
mm.
price of something that
Overpriced,
I'm
yeah.
experiencing, and I tell them, look, I've been doing this for so long, and then they second guessing whatever. So
Mm,
the bad part about that is that maybe this client, we don't understand what their challenges are from affordability. Maybe they shouldn't be working with someone at your price point.
mm,
um you know, so if you charge like maybe it's 10,000 rand and you like they can't afford 10,000 rand, they can afford 1,000 rand. You know, it's
mm,
similar like when I do home renovations, and I got a quote for a deck the other day. It was 26,000 rand. For me, I was like, holy smoke, that was a lot of money for a little bit of a deck. I thought that was, but I just said to them, thanks, that's out of my budget. I can't afford that. Thank you very much for your time. You know,
mm,
whereas in some business instances, in some life instances, you may come across it where somebody will then, it will sound like they're attacking you, but what they're really saying is that I can't afford it.
mm.
But nobody often says that. Nobody, like, you know, you don't go to a store and look at it and someone tells your price, you go, wow, I can't afford that. Normally what we do is like, yo, that's a lot of money. You know, we look at the
Just
price
browsing.
or something. Yeah, it's just browsing. So that's kind of what I do. And so that's why the question was a little bit more difficult for me to answer. I couldn't just straight away
Yeah.
answer it because like those clients that challenged me have taught me something, but they were still willing to pay in the end. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the I know who I don't want to work with is the easy one. I don't want to
Yeah.
work with clients that just haggle for haggling's sake. You know, they don't
Yeah.
trust your professional point of view. And
Yeah.
everyone is right and everyone is wrong. at some point in their career, man, a broken clock is right at least twice a day, so
Yeah.
I don't want to work with a client that is continually second guessing me or asking me at every step is what I'm doing, because then they clearly can't afford my services, because it's almost
Yeah.
like they're making sure that every minute I spend is a super valuable minute. They've got to trust
Yeah.
that I'm not overcharging them. If they don't do that, we shouldn't work together. They got to
Yeah.
trust I
I've
have the
I've I've
technical
actually experienced
ability.
that as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they got to trust I have the technical ability to do the
Mm-hmm.
work, so they're not sort of looking over my shoulder and watching me. And if they don't, then we shouldn't work together. And they got to trust that I'm going to deliver, and that when I say
Mm-hmm.
something, that's what it is. And if I get something wrong, that they get to trust that I will fix it, or that we'll reach some understanding and negotiate. So that's my ideal client, where there's experience in business, affordability for this kind of service, the stuff that I do, and that actually want to use the thing. That's the other thing. Like I've had
Mm-hmm.
client that paid me 50K up of for projects. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. Like we had it this month. This month, a client
Mm-hmm.
came back to us for something and says, "I've finally started using the solution that you did. We did this thing in 2017." I was like, holy schmoly, you paid like so much money for this and you're only using it now.
Now.
2017 is when we did this project. Like it's insane. So I want I do actually want my clients to use the stuff I give them, because what's the point of doing it? Now we all want our work to be valued. And so
Yeah.
this I want to be valued, I want my work to be valued, and I want the client to walk away feeling happy, like they got something that they appreciate, that they like, oh yes, this is exactly what I want. I had it happen the other day to a client. There was he looked at there was a draft that I did for them, for planning. They're doing some planning and in retail. And after the discussion, he looks like he was like, "Geez, I'm so excited. I love it. I love this look. I love what it's gonna do for our business. We're gonna be able to do so much with this." That made me feel. That made me want to work more on their project. That made me
Yeah.
want to be more flexible with my time on their project because of that
Yeah.
response. I probably shouldn't let them know that, but it just makes you, when someone appreciates you, you want to work for them. You want to do good work for them. When they pay the invoices on time, you want to work with them. You don't have to chase the invoices like, hey man,
100%.
like
I
how are we
know,
going?
100%. So we it's the same. We kind of saying the same thing here because actually, Richard, that final product that you give them, it's part of you. It's part of who you are,
Yeah.
right? And if someone else appreciates it, and as like you said, yes, you got terms with that client that's 15 days or 30 days, but the second that invoice goes out, that client pays it like religiously, you know. Or that client will phone you, Richard, you haven't sent me your invoice. And I'm like, whoa,
Said
okay.
no
So
client
thanks for the
ever.
heads up.
I think I
I've
used to
got a
do that.
couple
I
like
used to do that some years ago. Some years ago. I don't do that anymore.
yeah, yeah. So and that is the client. It's you've given that client part of who you are. That you've put in the time, you've put in your effort. There's a lot of sacrifices that goes on with it. It's family time. It's all of that stuff. You put it all together, and you put it on the table. And that client, you can see the benefit it adds to that client's business. And ultimately, the reward for you is invoices paid, and the client is just freaking happy. And it's
Yeah.
like you said, you prepare to put in that extra little, shift here or take the call. Like I'm telling you straight, there's a handful of clients I will take calls for like at 7, 8 o'clock the evening, right? There's not all of them because it comes down to that whole, like I think you mentioned it earlier, but these, especially if a client doesn't know your worth and he wants to haggle continuously, you know, and I'm like, nah, man, you don't deserve my time
Mm.
because firstly, A, and B, you had the whole day to ask me a question, right? But you want to call me at 8 o'clock the evening. I had one with a client actually this year, and I just said no. The next morning I woke up, sent him a mail. They still haven't gotten back to me with the right work because they sent us wrong information, and they expect us to turn it into to gold.
So that's what you do,
So
isn't
I'm like, nah, man.
it? You're accountants, you make
So I
gold.
just said, you don't deserve, you don't, yeah, yeah, no, no, I will make gold for you, but work with me, man.
Yeah.
And don't haggle about if you say, listen here, you're over the price. This price is not working. And
Mm.
then you still want to moan once we get your compliance. I'm like, nah, it's not working.
Yeah, that is a challenge, eh? So in that, I mean, when you're dealing with business now, I mean, in your experience, like you seem to have a very
Mm,
clear vision of what your ideal client is like. Like, how do
yeah.
you know when you in engaging in sales? Because we all want to get more customers. How do you get to that point where you start filtering out whether or not this is going to be a good fit for you? Like, when do you know that's happening, and what are your guidelines for identifying your ideal client?
That's a good question. I mean, I have certain filters is the right word, and maybe I must just take a step back. I think it's more on the our business model, um, where if that specific client doesn't fit the business model itself in terms of what type of information do we need from that client to be able to deliver um, the service. I'm prepared to go slightly left or slightly right with the requirements, but there is that yardstick that I know that you know my staff won't be able to handle, not my staff, but won't be able to deliver the specific package or product that we know we can. Um, and so I'll rather walk away from that service. But just to accept a sale or to accept a client because the number seems very good, and then midway through the scope or midway through the engagement, you come unstuck and you got to throw more resources at it. That's when it becomes a bit dangerous.
Cool. So I mean, but in all of that, like, what
Mm,
what are those, like, the do you have like some sort of telltale? Do you have something that you like can pick up on? You're like, oh, when if someone. So I'll tell you like an example. For me, it is so it's not so much the haggling on price, because everyone wants to
mm.
know they're getting good
Yeah,
value.
yeah,
Um, it's when someone um can't identify the value of the price. uh,
yeah.
uh, when I hear stuff like "you're too expensive,"
Mm,
so that's a key for me, and I go, "Cool." It's like an amber light. It's not a red light, because sometimes
mm,
someone's not actually saying that's bad. I've had clients that I work with today for years that have started off the conversation with "you're too expensive."
mm.
It's just a defense mechanism, but that is
Yeah.
one of the triggers for me. Do you have any
Mm.
sort of triggers that you hear that you've heard like over and over again that sort of gives you the sort of like, I better watch here for this, and I better write something extra in
Yeah.
the clauses or whatever it is you do
Yeah.
to test if this is a
Yeah.
good
As
client, a
a
good fit or not?
I think the if I can just go back to one of the previous episodes where I made this example of a long-standing client that we have in our stable today, and he doesn't question. Well, obviously he questions the numbers and stuff, but he just loves the relationship at the moment. And he used to say about how do you measure accountants' time? It's like measuring air, because he couldn't see the value, right? And it was up to me to demonstrate him what value we can add to his business. Uh, it's only at that point when he could see, all of a sudden, banks are happy with his reports, SARS is happy with his numbers, and that was the value that we added. Typically, to answer your question, is when we sit down and we give clients, like, typically our ranges in terms of pricing, our entry level price, our mid-tier price, you know and during the initial discussion, especially if it's a new or new business, then you put a number out there and they go, Oh no, but that's a bit steep. You know, we just started trading now, etc. So they just zone in on that price without even thinking about if they do a comparison, for example, where they go, okay, if I have to hire my own bookkeeper, how much is that going to cost me as compared to this outsource model? Bring me an outside company to actually do the work for me. So we go, okay, do that cost comparison and see the value that we can add as opposed to a full-time person.
Mm.
So typically, pricing is always a sticky issue before we even start.
Yeah.
Uh, when we give clients sort of those uh, ranges in terms of what's the lowest tier, what's the medium tier, what's the maximum tier, and where does that client fit in?
Mm.
So that's normally a common question that gets asked, especially when we sit with new businesses.
Yeah, yeah, and I find the same thing. So when people they make statements like you're not worth that, like not beyond it, just like that's the experience. They kind of almost like say you're not worth it, like they know
Mm,
you or your experience or your character or anything like that. So like it's a,
mm.
and I mean I know mostly mature enough to know they don't actually talking about me. They're just reacting more to themselves to say I can't afford it.
They yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but the other point that you raise is when someone zones in on price only and they
Mm,
ignore what they are buying. It's if
mm,
we went, like, you're looking for a new braai. If you compare like a kettle braai, you can get a kettle braai for 400 rand. You can get one for 1,800 rand. Different brands, different stuff. If you
mm.
only focus on the price, you're not actually know you don't know the difference to what you're buying because I've bought a cheap price. I've actually never bought an expensive rye, but I do know the value of it because
Yeah.
I've bought a lot of cheap ryes, and I
Mm,
have a friend who's bought one expensive rye. So I've probably paid more for the cheap rye over a number of years than what that person's paid for that one rye that they've had for the same time period. So
mm,
where they spend maybe they spend 1,800 rand on their kettle rye. I've
mm.
had four kettle braais, three little stainless steel stand thingies, and I've had a whole bunch of other stuff, and they've all sort of crumble. Maybe not the stainless steel ones, but the other stuff they all break and whatever over the years.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about a lot, like 3, 4 years. I've had a lot of braais. I kind of like buying a new braai, so maybe that's just crazy for me. But when people try to commoditize your service
Yeah.
or your product, you're not selling pencils. If you're selling
Mm,
something unique, then
yeah.
when people try to commoditize that and
Mm,
do price comparison, I know it's not a good fit. Because there's
yeah.
something else that I'm bringing that's of value into this relationship, which is years of experience, decades of experience that you can't
Yeah.
hire. You can't get that from someone. You compare me to your your whoever has got 2 years experience. I've got 25
Yeah.
years of experience. Like there's just no comparison.
Yeah.
It's impossible. They might have a lot of smarts on something, but that's kind of it. They got no business
Savvy.
experience. They got no,
Yes.
like, like being able to like hear something early on in a conversation that might say, you can
Mm,
warn the client, say, look, I know that this sounds exciting, but here's what I'm hearing. There could be a challenge.
mm,
So those kind of things I hear. And if I try to talk to a new client about that and try and
mm.
draw that conversation out from them, and then and the only thing they focus on is price, I know it's not a good fit.
100%.
Is there any else? I mean, price is a big thing, and because it really talks about the maturity of your relationship with that person and what that relationship is going to be like going forward. So one of
Yeah.
the things that I do know with experience also
Mm,
teaches me is that someone that haggles like heavily on price in the beginning, even if you do decide to move forward, which we have done in the past. I don't do it anymore, but we have done that in the past. That client becomes so expensive. Like a
yeah.
client has a cost to it. A client becomes
Yeah.
expensive because they demand so much of your time. Because for
Yeah.
them, if your service, let's say you charge 10,000 rand an hour, I mean, I'd love to be that person, but I'm not. But let's say you charged 1,000 rand an hour, and if you've brought on a client that's never paid 1,000 rand an hour for something, and they haggled on the price, they were expecting to pay 100 rand an hour. What they're going to do is put so much demand on you for that 1,000 rand because it's a lot of money for them. And
Yeah.
for you, it's just your standard service. It's maybe your
Yeah.
baseline service, but they
Yeah.
expecting super premier 17-star service for the 1,000 because they're not used to spending that kind of money for the service or product that you are
Mm.
providing. And so that is also one of the downsides of pushing past your warning signs in business and
Clients.
dealing with a client
100%.
that actually can't afford your service, whether you are a new business or not. That is a major
Do
problem with
you,
people
yeah.
that
Do
actually
you,
move forward with a deal and can't afford it.
yeah. Do you think it becomes, as service providers, we sometimes become a bit complacent, especially, where you've 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 reached that price point, right, with an existing client, and then all those I don't want to call it margin, but your rate's your rate, but you start eroding all of that because you've been so fixated on making sure the client gets the service. All those additional little add-ins that the client throws in there, right? It quickly adds up, and then before you know it, you actually you've gone far past that price point that you set for that client.
Yeah. So
It's very important that what you said now in terms of understanding that price point and understanding you know what your value is for that client.
yeah, and I think in a services business, obviously this is obviously geared a lot more for
Yeah, for
services.
service, yeah.
When we talk
Mm,
about price and hours and delivery, is
mm,
that we don't keep enough. We're not honest enough about the time we're spending on something. I've
yeah.
recently started talking about, you know, dealing with productivity and dealing with the challenges that I've been having with productivity for this year. I spoke about how I'm actually using my calendar as a way to keep track of the time I'm spending with clients, and I'm actually taking that data
Mm,
now, and I'm creating a bit of a productivity tool so I can actually extract that information from my calendar, very easy, just using Excel, and actually look at it. And I've done that now with a client. I've said, "Whoa, we've signed this contract for 30 hours. Like, we've just been having conversation for the last couple of weeks. We haven't actually done the
mm,
project yet, and already we had 25 hours just on
mm.
that, and like that's a problem." So it's been able to firstly, it's not the client's responsibility to do that. It's ours as the service provider
Yeah.
to guide them to say, "Yo, this is fantastic to talk to you. I love it. I love all the
Mm,
ideas, but it's going to come
mm.
down to a cost." And if they
Yeah.
say, "Look, oh, you just want to charge anything," that for me would be another warning sign that this is probably a client you should not work with.
Not
If
work
someone
with.
gets uptight, they must understand that if you are in the service business, that
Time
you
is your
time is what you
commodity.
you you are selling. Time, you know,
Yeah.
you are
Mm,
selling the fact. Your sales pitch should be that I can do it quicker in less time than someone with less experience, you know.
yeah.
So, and with fewer errors, and you get quality product, but
Mm,
the bottom line, it's still time, and if they don't understand it, that's a challenge. I think we dealt with this before. I spoke about a client that like was having fantastic we were having fantastic chats, and I said like, "Oh, this is great, but I got to get back to work." And then wanted me to say, "Oh, the thing that we did, that whatever, that they spent some money on a sizable amount of money, wanted me to do something else." And I said to them, "Cool, I'll put together a quotation for you," right? And I said, "I'll put together this quotation for you because," and I had to be clear. I said, "Look, just to be clear, man, I earn money because of the time I spend on stuff, and I bill people on time. I'm a consultant. I love our conversations, but I like you want. We've reached the end of this other agreement. We signed it off. You asking me for new things. There's a new cost that comes to it." And
Yeah.
the client actually said to me, like, oh, but we don't have budget in our department. I said, like, that's, I really, I feel for you, understand. You're like, maybe you can, I'll do a quote anyway, and maybe you can take it to the sort of CEO, whatever, and get approval for the work to be done. But you not being able to afford it shouldn't really oblige me to do it. And
Yeah.
having it, and I said, look, I love you, like I love like working with you, but I cannot work for free.
Yeah.
And that next day, the purchase order was approved. Like, it's that simple. Like, and also there's also where I think that sometimes we shouldn't be afraid to have those conversations with clients or potential clients, because maybe they're just not experienced enough,
Experience enough.
and
Yes,
so
that's a
they
good
don't
point.
know
Mm.
they don't know that this stuff happens. So they think that once they've acquired your service for one thing, for one set of or delivery, that it just means endlessly, that so you've got to also guide them. So that comes back to our maturity in business, about being able to guide that
Mm.
relationship, being
Mm.
self-aware about, and also just having the tools in place to help you
Yeah.
navigate through that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what I found, especially with a lot of the especially during this lockdown period now, clients that came that we've picked up was, a lot of the times our entry point is normally mid-year, right? So it's and a lot of my pitch to the client was around, okay, cool, we've come in now in July, but there's a whole lot of other months that's happened, right? I'm going to look forward and price it accordingly. But know this, there's got to be almost a separate project to make sure those other numbers that already happened, you know, that's almost seen as a separate project. But you gotta put that on the table up front, so that when you do get the client going, and up to date going forward, and you start doing the work that you weren't involved in, then and you start billing the client, and the client go, oh, but what is this for? All right, so you got to make sure that I think, understand the mandate first and foremost, and then pitch the client to say, yes, for the work going forward, yes, for the work that still needs to be for us to look at, for in order to get a better picture of the business itself. So
Yeah.
I started basically looking at almost like mini projects within a client's operation,
Mm.
just to make sure, and like you said, in terms of what is that price point,
Yeah.
so that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, and literally costing ourselves money, in
Yeah.
essence.
Yeah. I think, so what other I'll talk a little bit about the sort of, I think, why we do that. At least I know why I did that.
Mhm.
Sometimes continue to do that. But what are the other stuff that you find in just in your business, where it's warning signs that says that this might not be a good fit for a client to go forward with?
Um, I think I think at the moment it's more. I mean, we've kind of touched on the whole pricing thing, but it's more on just the amount, the head count, Richard. It's the client's business model as compared to our business model, and obviously we touch on all different sectors. We do different sectors, books, across all sectors, but there's just sometimes that yeah, there's certain alarm bells, especially if you know it's more than one resource, or that's required, and the client's not going to pay for an additional resource on that project. Um, it's clients, especially now as well, where I think a lot of businesses are going on this outsource model route, because of having keeping staff or non-essential staff on board. So when we try to sell an outsource service, it's very difficult to do cross. They You almost don't want to do work that they had four staff members. Now you got to try and fit all of that into one. And that's the challenges we've been experiencing of late, where you can't really, if you try to package it as four different levels of services, the client doesn't want to buy into it, even though they've kind of paid four staff members to do that same sort of
Mm.
function.
That's
So it's a bit of a challenge. They still think in their minds they need to almost get a discount for that because they're coming to you. So when you price it accordingly, and again, we don't want to make it a price conversation, but when you do price it, okay, you need us to do this, that, and that. That's what it's
mm-hmm.
gonna cost you. They seeing it as us having to perform all those functions basically, which is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. So that's some great insights there, Jermaine. So what I've got here in my notes is that besides price is a big thing. So price kind of
Mm,
I find that it's a disguise for a whole bunch of other emotions that happen or
mm,
other things that's happening in any business. So if especially with potential new clients, so
mm,
you've got to find out. So as a business, for me, getting a new client, it's a thrill. I love it. I love getting a new client. I love being in that sales process of working
mm,
with a potential client and then sort of getting them on board. So there's a client at the moment that I'm targeting. We've had a couple of conversations. It's really good. They sharing data with me, so it's at that point now where it can almost happen. But one of the problems of the red lights that's happening for me is that it's infrequent that I hear from this out that I have to follow up all the time. And that for me is almost like a problem, a
yeah.
warning sign in itself, is that
Mm,
if I have to follow
mm,
up too much to make the deal happen, it's
mm,
probably not a good fit. And it's not like they
mm,
don't need the work done. It's just like they'll miss meetings or the other things will be a priority. And I go like, maybe this isn't a priority for you right now. Maybe you shouldn't be focusing on
mm,
this because it sounds like you got a whole lot of other stuff happening. Because if
mm,
you need to work with that person, work with that client to understand their business, to understand what there is, to deliver a great product, like they need to give you the time.
mm.
What else? Obviously, if you need to get paid, like if somebody like they only respond to your emails 5 6 days later, like that will be a
Mm.
problem. So if you can
Yeah,
afford that, then great. But if you can't, stay away from clients like that. That would be a
yeah,
warning sign for me,
yeah.
is to stay away.
Yeah. Do you feel if you have to have multiple meetings with a client to keep discussing the same um, in order to move forward, you almost have multiple meetings over the same thing. It's that for me is also a bit of a worrying sign that you're not getting anywhere. Um, at some point you need to know where that cutoff is to say, you know what, and it's like you said now,
Yeah,
where maybe this is not for you. If you figured out what your business needs are, then yeah, we can certainly have a chat, sit around the
mm,
table again. But to have meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting just to scope the project out, it's
yeah.
it comes back to that whole time.
Yeah, I
It's
think I
it's
think
your
that
time.
yeah, that's a great point. So, Jermaine, how I look at that is that there's opportunity. All of these things are opportunity,
Mm,
and you've got to
mm,
understand your process. To know whether or not, like, look, this takes 1 or 2 meetings. So,
mm,
I mean, in that instance, let's say you know that whatever the business requirement is, it really just takes
mm.
2 meetings to scope out a session.
Yep.
And
Yep.
if they ask for another meeting, what I would do is to say, look, you know I typically don't need more than 2 meetings, which we've already had. If you do feel
Mm,
that we need to discuss this anymore, I suggest moving to a consultative approach where we can have the meetings but then they become billable meetings.
level meetings. Yeah.
Let me know if you
Yeah.
still want to have the meeting on these conditions. That's one way to
Yeah.
deal with it, to tell them, to say, look, I can't just spend endless time in this meeting. If they disagree with you, then that's a red, a red light or a warning sign
A
that
red
says to you,
red
look, I
flag.
don't
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm experienced enough to know this. Maybe maybe we're not a good fit to work together. And saying no
Mm.
to the client would, they, because at some point you have to put forward your experience and be confident enough to stand by it. And there's no
Back,
better
yeah.
way to be show your confidence than saying no. So that is
Mm.
a good thing to do. It might turn the client to say, okay, cool, this guy really knows what he's talking about, so let's back off. Or they
Mm.
say, here's the reasons I'm concerned. I want to have another discussion based on this. And you can say, cool, those are all valid points. However, I do know about them. It's something that we work through in our process. If you still want to
Mm.
meet, it will be
Mm.
billable. Do you
Mm.
want to go ahead? So that's ways that you deal with it. It also might be a way to onboard them to find out what their billing process is like.
But
I would
yeah,
suggest billing up front for meetings like that. So you actually
yeah,
get paid first. That is just something that
yeah,
I've experienced with, especially with new clients, to go
yeah.
through that invoicing process first. People get upset about it, and if they get too upset about it, because money is a big deal. Like
It
it's the
is, yeah.
main thing that
Mm.
all of this is kind of delivers around is your service worth it? Is the thing I'm getting worth the money that I'm spending? I'm taking money out of this account to give to you, money that I could have kept or
Mm.
money that I could have used elsewhere. Now I'm going to give it to you. I want to make sure it's worth it. So if they're not sure about that, they sort of in doubt. That's what the client's really
Yeah,
doing when they're haggling over price. They're in doubt of whether or not they want to spend this money. Like it's just
yeah.
you have to have a way to sort of navigate through that to get to the right answer of whether or not a good if it's
Answer.
good enough fit
Good,
for you. So
yeah.
that's
Mm.
kind of
Mm.
what I would do when they're having too many meetings. That actually I'd know that it just takes 2 meetings. We don't need to have more meetings than this. If you do want to work through the
Mm.
detail, let's go through this and it becomes a billable project. I've done that multiple times. Either the client goes away or they agree to it and they pay the money. Um, One thing that I do actually do is I say that for a project to work, we have to have an analysis part of the project. And the analysis are these meetings where you figure out the scope of it. And that's a paid for thing.
Yeah,
And I have an outcome for that that says, even if you could decide you don't want to continue the project with me, you'd have this outcome, this document, this feedback, the whatever it is that you can then use to go further. So you have
yeah.
to
The
be able
client's
to
a client's a bit wiser. Yes,
you
yeah.
have to be able to
Mm.
give them a deliverable for the money that they're paying you,
Paying you,
and so
yeah.
that's
Mm.
sort of a way that I would deal with that aspect of business and negotiating and actually delivering a
Yeah.
project because it gives you some cash flow to actually work on the project and it gives you some guarantee. Asking
Mm.
for a deposit has multiple reasons. So besides the cash flow thing, it actually gives you an opportunity to work through the client's invoicing process. Like how long does it take them to pay? Do you have to have it signed off by 3 people? Because you don't know that coming into a new business. They may say, oh, you need a PO number, and they take long to pay you. Especially if it's a larger organization that you work with, like they might take long to pay you. And so having an invoice early, upfront in a project is generally a good thing. You also raised something that, Jermaine, this is so much good content. And so we spoke about the can they afford you, because that is a good question to ask. But I heard you talk
Yeah.
about something which just says, what I think is really good to work through is you have to be able to, at some point, you as the service provider, you as the person trying to do business with this new client, you have to ask the
Yeah.
question is to understand that how this could break, understand how the relationship could break, understand how this business deal could break. What would break this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so if you search for that answer, if you're asking that question, you search for that answer and you don't find an answer, you don't find it coming up, like, oh, then it might seem like a good thing, like, cool. Like if you ask questions like you were saying, like a good question in your firm, I think would be to ask, why have if how old is your business? They say, oh, we're a new business. You say, as a new business, why do you think it's important to have an accounting service right now? Why aren't you doing this on like yourself? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then follow-up questions would be, so do you think you can, like, you in it's going to all you're going to get from the service that's tangible to you is a P&L report or balance sheet, like reports,
Balance
literally
sheet.
an Excel
Yeah.
document. Is
Yeah.
that going to be worth it for you? Even though you
Yeah.
don't see the other
Uh,
stuff, is that going to work? Like those
yeah.
kind of having those probing questions early on,
Yeah.
Like, and you almost get the client to defend why they think it's a good idea. If the client does start
Yeah.
defending, or if they go, then you know they haven't thought about that yet. So now they're
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
about it.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that specific point because normally, and obviously we've gotten better at it to the point where you just mentioned it now. In the past, it was, especially with new entrepreneurs coming into the market, it was always about, okay, so here's an accountant. I got a new business. What do we do? So the common line was always, you go trade for 3-4 months, build up your business. You come back and then let's sit down if there's numbers there. But putting it that way, the way you've just mentioned it, makes it it makes the client think, actually this accountant can be here from the start, and then go with you on that journey, and then you just set up those predefined I don't know, markers or reports, and make the client think of the benefit of having you on board almost from the
Yeah,
start.
yeah. The
It's actually a
challenge.
very, very interesting point.
Yeah, the challenge with services businesses is, if because a lot of it is the intangible. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not buying stationery. They're not getting, like,
like no buying
five
stationery.
books,
Yeah.
or
Mm,
a
mm,
ream of paper. Or if there's anyone in the stationery business, I'm sorry if this makes you feel uncomfortable. I'm not trying to do that on purpose, but it's not a commodity item. Like, it's an intangible thing, and so
yeah,
if they can't defend the value of what they're buying, even though you may have sold it to them. There's a reason that you're sitting down with them. Like, I just think I need to get my accounts right. So for me, the value is staying compliant. It's got nothing
yeah,
to do with the P now. It's got staying
yeah,
compliant. Like, when you're in business, that's a real thing. Though when you
yeah.
want to grow, it's why, as a small business, I've been able to win contracts like Woolworths, like
Mm,
Vodacom, Clicks Group, Oceanic Group, like these massive companies that don't generally deal
mm,
with small businesses. The
mm,
reason I was able to do business for them is I had all my paperwork in order. I was compliant. Like, I had all the
yeah,
stuff done. Like, they asked me for a workman's compensation certificate. I had it. They asked me I had it.
yeah,
And that compliance won me
mm,
business. It also helped me
mm,
outcompete other small businesses when there was
yeah,
opportunities, because generally there'd be, like, 30 small businesses competing for it. Like, 25 of them don't
mm,
have any history or
yeah.
track record or
Track record.
finances or anything that they can
Mm,
show. And when you tender or when you
mm,
pitch for business,
uh,
especially as a small business, like, the big business will look at your liquidity, and want to know that you're going to be able to firstly deliver the project, and you're going to be around for a while. So, like, when we were starting out, it was an advantage.
I
So it
think,
wasn't
yeah.
the accounts was something, and I was bad at it, and I was
Ju-
afraid of numbers, but I learned over
Yeah,
time. But it was
yeah,
literally for compliance. That's what I was paying for.
yeah. I mean, it's funny you mentioned compliance because we had a meeting. I was sitting with another service provider actually last week, and he was referred to us by another firm, and we just wanted to see if there's synergy amongst us as service providers, which there were. And then he basically asked me this one question, but I had to do it in like 20 seconds. He wanted a 20-second answer, which I thought was quite funny at the time. But he asked me in some, because he obviously asked us about price points, and if he refers anyone to us, what is that price point, or how do we measure whether we take the client on board or not. Uh, and he asked me, okay, if it was 20 if I give you 20 seconds, how would you sell? So, and you actually mentioned it now, and my answer was, we'll keep you compliant. All right, we keep you compliant. You know, it's a lot of people, if they don't know what it is, we keep you compliant with SARS, which then it's just got that the whole value chain, Richard, is ticked. It's like you said now, when you went for the big tenders, it's you got your tax clearance, you got your workman's comp. We make sure all of that's happening in the background, and I
Yeah.
actually summed it up in 20 seconds.
Mm.
And it's just about us, again, just knowing your worth, knowing your product, um,
Yeah.
and then yeah, you can tick all those boxes.
Yeah, and so when you're working with a potential client and you're trying to evaluate whether or not this is a good fit, some of the
Mm,
key things would be to ask those questions: is
mm.
what would break this relationship, what would
Yeah,
break this agreement, what would strain
yeah,
or weigh heavily on this agreement. You got to understand that, and you almost got to be able to ask those kind of clear questions, like I said in the
mm,
financing.
mm.
It's how long is your business is running? Why do you think you need accountants? Like what is, and actually are interviewing them, because and the reason you want to do that, like in the beginning, when, like with every business, I suppose, is like you're just glad to get a new client and signing a new client, doing
Yeah,
business. But eventually clients become expensive, and the longer you've worked with a client, the more expensive that client actually becomes, because they're slower to pay the new rates. Let's say you increase your rates, the new client, but I've always paid $50 for your services. Like people that say like petrol prices haven't
mm,
really gone up, because they always
yeah,
just put 500 rand in the tank. Like great, but
yeah.
like petrol's gone up. You're getting less liters for
Less
that.
liters,
But so anyways, I don't want to
less,
explain how
less
petrol
value for
price
your
works.
buck.
Yeah, you're getting less value. So with older
Yeah,
clients, it's always difficult unless they with on the journey, and but that's again comes to sales. You need to be able to upsell them and sort of bring new products to them, continually
yeah,
exciting them to work with
yeah,
you. But in the
yeah.
beginning, you almost got to get them to sell you on why they're going to take the service, what benefit they're going to get from working from you, why they think this is a good idea, and are they going to continue to pay for this in the future? Why do they think it's a good idea if it's a monthly service? Why do they think it's a good idea to continue to pay for this monthly? And if they kind of can't answer that question, like I would caution you about whether or not you want to go ahead and work with this client, because they may start haggling when they go like, I don't really see the value in this, and then it
Yeah,
can damage your business, and then they can consume your time,
yeah.
which is obviously unfavorable for you as a business that's
Wow.
trading on time.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way of looking at it actually.
Mm.
Actually, I actually didn't think of it like that in terms of what's that breaking point. It's actually a very interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, and then the dead giveaway for me, the dead giveaway from me is there's a couple of ways that this happens, but the dead giveaway for me where I just won't work with someone is when they let me know how much I must appreciate doing business with him. Like,
With him.
yeah,
Yes.
that is a
Yeah,
like,
I've heard
okay,
that before.
cool. I'm like, okay,
Okay, it's okay.
so by get
Let's
out of
move
that,
on.
it's like, look, I'm gonna save you that trouble,
Yeah.
man. Like, we don't have to work together. Like, that's kind of
Yeah.
where I go. I'm not always that blunt, but sometimes I am. But if a client wants you to feel grateful that you're doing business with them, like that is the wrong relation. That's the wrong way to start a relationship. Like if
Yeah.
you
That's just
like
toxic,
in
yeah.
a in a in a in a romantic relationship or in a friendship, if the other person wants you to be grateful that they friends with you, that they in a relationship with you, it's a bad
Yeah.
relationship. Get out.
Walk away.
Yeah,
Yeah, walk away.
you don't need to be in that relationship. So, or they keep reminding you that they're paying you, that's bad stuff. You want to get out of that, unless of course there's a problem and you're not delivering to the service that they're expecting or that you agreed upon. Then that's something for you to sort of listen to and sort of be aware of. But in the beginning, when it's a new relationship, if someone wants you to be grateful that they're doing business with you, then it's a warning sign. The other
Yeah.
warning sign, the sort of the child of that warning sign, I don't know if you can have a child of a warning sign, but the child of that warning sign is that,
The
like,
spawn.
they want you to discount the service by so much because they're going to bring you so much business.
So much for business. I've
So
heard
much
that as well.
business.
I've heard that as well.
That is a warning
Yeah.
sign. I'd never do
Yeah.
that. I actually up my
Yeah.
price. I go, cool.
Yeah.
Look, let's do this piece of work. If you can afford this work and if you're happy with it, then we can talk about the other stuff. But for now, all we have is this thing. And I think the saying is a bird in the hand is worth more than two in the bush. Um, those things are real. Like someone that is
Yeah.
promising you the future work, when they do that, that is a warning sign. Like, don't, like,
Net
walk
present value.
away. Walk away, or
Yeah.
be confident enough to say, look, that sounds amazing. I, I'd love to work with you long term. I'd love to do all this work, but right now we're dealing
Let's
with
focus on the
this
now.
contract, with this thing
Yeah.
here. Let's conclude this. If we can agree this, then that means that future becomes so much better. But if they want you to discount or heavily discount or do something with your pricing, or add on services for free, which is the same thing as discounting,
Yeah.
on the promise of future work, don't work with him. Like,
Don't work.
it's for me, it's never ever worked out. I don't know anyone that has worked out for. So, because generally what happens is that future work doesn't come because it's not guaranteed. They are either seeing something in you or think that there's an opportunity that they can squeeze more out of you, to
Yeah.
get their own benefit. That's what these clients are doing. Not bad people. Maybe they are bad people. I don't know. But generally, I found that, it's you've got to know your business. You've got to know what you want more than what, like, the other people. So it's not really about me.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whew. Hey, that's I think some great advice. I know that when I got started, and people told me this, I listened to none of it. So I'm hoping
I
that
know.
you take away something out of this and you hear it, and
Yeah.
then maybe 5, 10 years of doing business, you remember the thing that we said here, and you're like,
That
oh
we just
yeah, I
mentioned.
probably
Yeah.
should have listened to that.
I mean, if I can have a closing, as a closing comment,
Mm.
it's just a couple of words, I guess. It's just know your worth. You know, trust your experience. You've gone through this for a reason. You understand your product, and it's like you said now as well, Richard. You understand your business. You understand your product. And if you tick all those boxes, the conversation should be a bit easier. And it's like you said now as well. At the beginning stages, you just wanted to sign everyone up. But the more experience you get, you start differentiating between, the what is that breaking point and what's not. So that's my final comment on it.